What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness Podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Project Lioness Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Mel Krug, and today I am joined by one of my favorite humans and people on the planet, Jennifer Alley. And those of you who have listened to this podcast, if you're an OG, you know her, you are familiar with her. She is a repeat guest, a repeat offender of the consciousness space that is Project Lioness. And before we continue, for those of you who are maybe new listeners or you're new to this world, welcome. Let me share a little bit more about Jennifer, one of my dear friends and amazing people on the planet. So Jennifer Alley Kern is a national award-winning author, inner alignment coach, Akashic Records Master Practitioner, trainer, and keynote speaker. She specializes in working with conscious entrepreneurs, leaders, healers, and creatives to expand their consciousness, cultivate clarity, embody greater sovereignty, and truly live their soul's unique path, passions, and purpose. Her teaching methods and proven process launch them into expressing their higher potential, manifesting their deepest desires, and making a bigger positive impact in this wild human realm while having ease and joy along the way. So welcome, Jennifer, to the podcast. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Again.
You're welcome, my friend. Yes, again. And for those of you who don't know, if you're not on our Instagrams, you know that Jennifer and I go way back. It's been over 10 years of friendship.
Yep.
We have been clients of each other. Oh my gosh, so wild.
Go ahead, though.
Well, just sharing, those of you who are new, those of you who know, Jennifer and I go way back. We've been friends, we've been colleagues, we've been clients of each other, and I think have traveled many lifetimes, many soul times together. And I'm so grateful that she's here to share her wisdom in the year of transformation, baby. So for those of you who are listening, we are recording literally the week that we're leaving the year of the horse, or leaving the year of the snake, entering the year of the horse. And something that Jennifer and I have been really reflecting on in our work with our clients and each other is, how do we navigate this space that is the liminal space, the space between, or as we were laughing before we recorded this episode and planning this episode, the what the fuck to do when you don't know what the fuck to do. And I would say that Jennifer is an absolute master at this, and helping people navigate that. And she's got her own journey and her own story. So I don't know, Jennifer, if there's anything you want to add to the intro or just welcome yourself more, because we're going to get into this topic of the liminal space and what we're seeing and her journey and how she's mastered it. But anything you want to add before we dive into that?
No, I think that's a perfect place to start. I'll just say thank you again for having me here. I'm excited about this conversation because I am seeing a lot of people navigating liminal space, being in the in-between. You know, it's sort of like they have 2 feet firmly implanted in midair, right? It's like they're in the middle of a launch to something new, but doesn't feel like there's solid ground to stand on. And that can be a really scary place, but it also can be a really exciting place.
Yeah, I know when you and I were jamming on what to talk about, what would be most valuable for our listeners and our audience, the way that I like to describe that is you're on this trapeze of life, metaphorically and physically, and you are swinging and you've let go of one bar and you're kind of floating and you're like, oh shit, is that like, I know that next bar is going to come, but when is it going to come? And you're kind of floating in this space between. And something that I've been seeing in my patients and my clients is really this kind of dissolution of things that were the past, and also a little bit of uncertainty of what's to come and really how to navigate that space of metamorphosis. I'm curious what you've been seeing in your world, in your clients, and then, I'd love for the listeners to hear you have a very unique journey that I think speaks to the mastery that you have of this space.
Mm. Yeah. Let me speak first to metamorphosis because I think that's an excellent word because really what's happening in that liminal space in the middle ground is complete dissolution. It's a dissolving of
Mm,
an old self, an old paradigm, an old identity even. And yet in order to rebuild the new one, you have to like let the first one completely dissolve or crumble. And so there's a lot of disorientation that happens there. There's a lot of feeling lost,
mm,
feeling unsettled, ungrounded. Of course, that's going to bring up fear. It can bring up a lot of grief. It can bring up a lot of anger as well. Any of those sort of lower frequency states that are indicators of separation from your own self.
mm,
And that is the point, is
mm,
that complete disconnection from what you thought was reality in order to build yourself up to the next new level of who you're capable of becoming, and then step into a reality that's actually more harmonized for
mm.
who you really are and what your soul is here on this journey for.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you mentioned that because I think so many people that I see when they're in that space and they're dealing with some of those, as you said, lower vibrational experiences, or it can feel like terror or chaos or just so much uncertainty in the nervous system. A lot of people will try to avoid that. And then it almost pops up down the road to help us, learn again. Right. And I think there's such a beauty in like, that's the point, like you said. And I know you have some personal experience with navigating this space, and you and I have reflected on this a lot. And one of the reasons, y'all, why I brought Jennifer on is because of her ability to navigate these spaces in her own life, as well as teach others and support others in those spaces. And I know one of the experiences you've had is, in relationships, for example. I'm seeing a lot of that where people are going through their own self metamorphosis, and the relationships they thought were supportive are no longer. They're dissolving, right? Whether it's intimate relationships or, friend relationships or business relationships. So I would love to hear your perspective on
Or
that.
family relationships.
Or family relationships.
That's a
Yep,
big
that
one.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me speak to that and as a kind of tie into something that you just said about like people are not always wanting to be present to the negative emotions that are part of this kind of transformation. But if you're not present to them, they're going to pop up somewhere else. And that
Yeah.
popping up, that's something that's just going to happen.
Mm,
We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And a big part of the whole purpose of being here is expansion. Expansion is
mhm,
growth. And so we're always going to go through certain cycles of the same kinds of things in order for the soul to explore it from different angles.
mm,
So I hear people get really down on themselves when, why am I here again? Why is this happening again? That kind of thing. And some of it is, yeah, maybe things weren't completely resolved or tended to or processed when you went through it previously. But some of it is also, this is just part of your soul's unique path at this
mhm.
time through this lifetime. And there are a lot of patterns that I think are similar among human consciousness that kind of everyone's working through. And then there are some things that are unique to you.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I have had to work through one of the main themes of my life is abandonment.
Mhm,
So, from a very young age, abandonment and loss were just kind of the name of the game. It was always present in my life. My parents divorced when I was 3.5 years old. And then that started just a whole cascade of experiences where I had loss of connection to family members. I grew up in households with addictions present, also mental health issues in the adults in my household. My dad had different partners, my mom had a different partners, and then I had a stepdad. And so I
mm,
had these sort of like split households, and there was always a lot of chaos. There was a lot of like bouncing around, not really knowing what to expect. and there was a lot of moving. So my mom and stepdad moved me a lot. So from kindergarten to 12th grade, I went to 9 different schools. So I was
Mhm.
always a new girl in school. So always in
Mhm.
that liminal space of leaving something behind and stepping into something new, which taught me a lot about how to be agile, how to be flexible, how to connect with people pretty quickly and pretty easily. And that actually laid a really good foundation for the work that I do now.
Mhm.
So, that's where it showed up once, right? And then it continues to show up in my adult life. So, when I was 16 years old, I actually got kicked out of the house and ended up finishing my high school years living with two different, essentially, foster families. So, again,
Mm.
being in liminal space, at the time that I was being kicked out, I didn't know where was I going to live? Where was I going to land? Who would want me?
Mm.
Where did I have a sense of belonging? And then in my college years, I did a lot of travel. I actually lived in Europe. I lived in
Mhm.
different countries. I traveled a lot, was constantly like learning different languages, meeting new people, again, carrying that trend through
Yeah.
of, always changing connections, always being the new girl,
Yeah.
et cetera. And so that's something that's kind of always been a theme. So, and there's grief that comes with like each transition because there's a sense of loss, and there's also rebirth. There's
Mm.
opportunity, there's new connections. And from where I sit now, when I reflect on my life, even through my adult years, I've gone through a number of different transitions in relationships and where I live, iterations of business and professional life, changes in my family system, things like that. And as I look back now, I just think there were so many heartaches, and there were so
Mm.
many times that just, like, broke me,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have wanted to miss any of it. Like,
Mm.
when I think of all the people that I've been able to meet up until now, and my life's not done, not even close to it,
Yeah.
it just makes me think how lucky I've been because there are so many wonderful people in the world, and there are so many
Mhm.
wonderful spaces and opportunities, and that's the flip side of it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the
Mm.
polarity of it. And I know, Dr. Melly, you speak a lot to the balance of things in life. So while we
Yep.
can look at like the chaos and the trauma and all of the things that were hard, excuse me, it's like, what's the blessing? What's
Yes.
the opportunity? What's the gift here? How am I growing? How am I being cultivated? How am I being refined? That's so much of what's happening in the liminal space is opportunity because it's a period of death that's like just about to link to rebirth.
Yeah.
Kind of like being in between the neurons in
Mm.
the synapse,
The
right?
synapse.
Just speak
Ooh.
to speak Dr. Mel language. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, and the
That
neurology,
sounds like a great experience we could host, the
the
synapse.
synapse. So it's like living in the synapse. It's like being in between in that jumping space, right? In
Yeah.
between the trapeze bars,
Yeah.
to use your
Yeah.
example. And in there is where there's opportunity, there's exhilaration. The problem is the resistance to it.
Yes.
The
Yes.
issue is not the dissolving, the issue it's the trying to hold on to the old identity and what used to be there and what you thought was safe.
Yeah.
And at some point you start to recognize that's not where the safety is.
Mm.
The safety is inside me.
Yeah.
The safety is how I manage my energy. The safety is my connection to the universe, to my own higher self, my own soul, because that's where the template, the blueprint for the whole
Mm.
journey is housed. And that's then where the answers are for what next? Now, where do I go? What does this mean about me? What do I have to let go of? Who am I becoming? What am I stepping into? Like the liminal space is all about the questions, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of juiciness there.
There is. Oh man, that was so wise. If I could reflect on a couple of things you
Yeah.
mentioned, and we'll dive into more of your personal experience. It makes me think about, and something I shared with you, even for myself, I've had a couple moments in the last couple weeks where I've had some opportunities to ask questions about my first business, Inspire Life, and like what is to be of that after the next year and a half when our lease ends. And I was reflecting on that with you. So it's making me, this conversation is making me reflect again. And I love how you said that space is like the questions, because sometimes you ask a question of the universe and the answer doesn't always come right away.
Mhm.
So it's like you said, learning how to hang with that energy, and our resistance to the answer or the how is what keeps us kind of stuck there, right? Or we default back into what we think is safe,
Mhm.
but really isn't true safety. It's just comfortable. It's just familiar. And speaking from the
And
nervous system, go
it
ahead.
usually
Yeah.
isn't anymore,
Yes, very true. Yeah,
so there's
very
that
true.
rub too, but go ahead.
Yeah. And I know you're going to share that in your story, which I think is really powerful. Um, and from the nervous system perspective that I see with clients is there's a lot of familiarity with having an identity. And when that identity starts to dissolve, then it's like, well, who am I really?
Yeah.
Right? Because our ego will attach to these identities, or as you and I have taught, like archetypes, but it's like, is that who you are really at the core of it? Which you're not. In the three-dimensional world, you're constantly dying. Your cells, y'all, are constantly dying and being recreated every single freaking day. Like you're doing mitosis and apoptosis. You're both living and dying simultaneously in your physical matter every single day. So then the question is like, who are you really? Right.
Mhm.
I'm glad that you spoke to that, because something that I see too is when you're in the moment, there can be a lot of fear and you can't always access that, like
Correct.
what you're speaking to, that like opportunity or silver lining type thinking. So I'm curious, like, how have you navigated that, having gone through this multiple times in your adult life? And then at the end of this, y'all, Jennifer and I will share some strategies and maybe things to think about when you're like really fucking in it and you don't know what to do, like what to do when you don't know what the fuck to do.
Yep.
Because we get, when you're in it, you're like, what do you mean there's a benefit to this? What do you mean there's an opportunity? Like this is just so much, right? It's overwhelming. So I'm gonna pause and give it back to you.
Yeah. So I think the thing to do in those instances is nothing.
Yeah.
It's giving yourself over to the process. It's a wave.
Mm,
It's a wave that's moving through you and it's temporary. And when you resist the wave, that's when you get issues. That's when it becomes painful. So if you can kind of allow yourself to surrender,
mhm,
relax into it, and tolerate the discomfort.
mm,
I think there's a lot of power in being able to tolerate whatever's coming up. And when you can be present, almost like you're watching it or witnessing it. And this takes practice. This is not something you just start or just jump into. It takes practice. I would encourage anyone who feels like you're going through this to tap into a guide of some sort to help you move through this, because these are a lot of internal processes where you're working with the brain, you're working with the nervous system, you're working with your spiritual aspects. And like, how do you navigate that? Good guidance is an important part of that.
yes.
And so once you're in your internal world and can start paying attention to what's the emotional wave that I'm in, what's happening inside me that's cracking open, what do these tears want to say? How does
Mm,
my body want to move and shake? Like whatever's coming through, because that's the energy moving. It's trying to discharge itself.
yeah.
Literally discharge, like release, but also take the charge out of it in order to make new space inside of you for what wants to enter, which is more of
Mm,
your own soul's truth, more of yourself. It's
mhm,
a way of coming back to yourself, releasing a lot of the old shit that was given to you, that comes through childhood programming and experiences and family and the paradigm and the culture and all of these things that aren't really you.
yeah.
And so it's a rediscovery of self, but you can't do it until you unpack all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very wise. And that's the paradox of the name of our podcast is trusting. And something I know you gave me in one of a session that I did with you is, instead of surrender, for me, the word like trusting the experience, trusting yourself in the experience. So that I could relax into it was like a game changer.
Mhm.
because some of us have this programming of like, I'm going to effort through it, or I'm going to do more, or I'm avoiding this discomfort, which creates more resistance. And I think of it as like a Chinese finger trap, or like the more you try to pull yourself out of that vortex, it kind of sucks you back in. So I really appreciate the languaging, and I agree with you. I think this is something that takes time and training, and your brain can learn, your body can learn, and it does require, I think, sometimes some guidance from people who have been there and who have studied and understand the nervous system and the brain, and how human beings operate and how that connects to our soul purpose.
Yeah.
So
I think the thing to highlight here is there's a distinction when we're talking about surrender. It's letting go of control of anything external. So it's
Yeah.
letting go of control of circumstances, control of other people's choices and behavior, control of timing, these kinds of things. And what you do to build that trust is you cultivate command of your own energy.
Yeah.
So when you start to shift that awareness and pull it back in, so these circumstances are happening. How do I take command of my own energy to navigate it in a way that feels authentic to me, that's in alignment with my values,
Yeah.
and that's cultivating more and more who I want to become? What feels in integrity? How am I operating from self-authority? How am I discovering something new about what I need to let go of and what I want to step into? So it's sort of, taking command of your inner world as opposed to trying to control the outer world.
Because most of the other world is an illusion anyway.
It is. And it's responding to your energy.
Totally.
Right? So when you pull the power back into you, you completely shift your vibrational field. So you're in a much more of a state of coherence. And when you create coherence in your energy field, then things that are aligned to you naturally show up with ease and flow, letting go of stress and struggle. It just happens.
Yeah.
That's where you experience more synchronicities. That's where things just click. It's a cool way to live.
It is a cool way to live.
Cool.
And not without some contraction, as I know Jennifer speaks to a lot. I'm curious. I know you have quite the personal journey going through some of these experiences that I know has transmitted to supporting and serving people. And one of the big things and themes that I'm seeing is the relationship shifting, especially with women who I serve, where they're evolving out of these relationships, intimacy. And I know that is not new to you. So I'm curious if you're open to sharing some of your personal story going through specifically like divorce. That's a big thing I'm seeing come up, or people feeling like they're not supported in their intimate relationships, but they have that fear of stepping into the liminal space.
Yeah. So going through a divorce is its own journey. So when we're talking about significant other relationships, there are a lot of dynamics at play. So let's kind of hone that in, Dr. Mel. What's actually the most important part to share right now?
Yeah, I think, when I've heard you share your journey, it just reminds me of so many people that I'm serving currently. And I know this audience is experiencing when it comes to like really wanting to leave and step out, but feeling like you can't.
Okay.
And going through that experience of like trusting yourself, building that self-trust, building that resilience, even when sometimes we default back to the relationship. So specifically like the capacity and the self-trust you built, even in fear, right? How to navigate like that fear, or I know you have a good term, like terror barrier that comes up when you know that there's a decision to be made that's in alignment with your higher good, your higher potential, right? Does that help hone it in?
Yeah. I just wanted to be sure which part to speak.
Yeah, because we could make a whole freaking
series, book, movie.
Yeah. Yes, we're gonna make a movie, y'all. Watch out.
Yeah. Mockumentary, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. So so I went through divorce a number of years ago, and I was in a marriage that, first of all, wasn't bad. It was, for all intents and purposes, like a very good-looking marriage.
Mm.
But there was a slow decline happening because there is an erosion of the communication, and we weren't connecting. And any of the steps that were being taken to try to cultivate that and heal that just weren't clicking. And so I knew for myself that um, I didn't want to live the rest of my life in a marriage that wasn't aligned for me and that didn't
Mm.
feel in integrity for me.
Mm.
So I decided that I would need to make that transition. And I started in the fall. So September, October, I had moved my things out. I was very scared. I had been financially supported by my former
Mm.
husband. And, I had my business and, I had some clients, but I hadn't been proactive about building it because I was immersed and invested in other things, raising stepkids and taking care of my grandmother when she was in her end of life stages, writing my book. Like there
Mm.
were just other things. And I had, the good fortune of, having a husband who could provide, who could pay all the bills.
Mm.
So one of the big fears I had was around money
Yeah.
and thinking there's no way I can make enough money to provide, this kind of lifestyle and, what would I have to settle for and that kind of thing. So I did go ahead and get an apartment and it was something like, I just thought this is what I can afford, but it was a little bit dingy. It was a little bit creepy, frankly. But I was gonna be brave. And
Yep.
I moved some stuff out and I told him, I'm gonna go and separate, for a while.
Mm.
And then we'll figure this out or whatever is gonna happen. And I left. And I remember that first night I cried,
Mm.
scared until about 1 o'clock in the morning and fell asleep, woke up at 4, walked into the living room, and just my knees hit the floor and I was bawling, and it felt like the 2 hands of death were reaching in and grabbing all of my visceral organs and pulling them out. I mean, it was a physical
Mm.
pain and just
Yeah.
this shaking terror. And then all of a sudden, I had this thought come over me like, maybe I can save the marriage.
Mm.
And I was back home in bed with my husband by 5 o'clock that morning.
Mm.
And I didn't leave again for 8 months.
Mm.
So it took me all the way until the next spring to really build up the courage to say and keep trying, right?
Yeah.
But build up the courage to say, okay, this doesn't work. We need to start an official separation. Now, what happened during those 8 months, I started waking up every morning at 3, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I knew that I was being called. Like this is
Mm.
the spiritual hour. So
Yeah.
I would get up, I would go do my meditation, and I would spend a good hour, hour and a half, 2 hours just studying a lot about manifestation, about law of attraction, about how your thoughts create your reality, all of these kinds of concepts that I knew, I trusted, I believed in, but I didn't know how to put them together yet. And a lot of
Mm.
meditation, which now I refer to as grooming my nervous system upwards to the point where I was actually able to make the change.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of meditation. There was a lot of actually tapping into my Akashic records at the Akashic field at that time, which I didn't even know I was doing that.
Yeah.
Um, but that was coming through. So that connection, that spiritual connection was really opening up. And I got a lot of guidance through that. Even literal guidance, like I had to pick a lawyer. And that's
Yeah.
a whole other story. I know we don't have time for that today, Dr. Mel. We can put that in the movie. But
Yeah.
even like
Yeah.
how that came through, it was literal
Yeah.
guidance.
Wow.
So so there was this whole grooming process. And then I remember that spring, I think it was March, I was standing in that apartment that I've been paying rent for every month, like writing another rent check and not living there. And I remember
Wow.
looking around, and all of a sudden I had this thought come through that was like, Jennifer, just go make more money. Like, that's your big problem. Like, just go make more money. And it was like the most obvious thing in the world. This ding, ding, ding. Right. So, and I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything moved. Yeah,
Wow.
I still had like 4 months left on that lease, and I met a travel nurse who needed a place for 4 months, and she took over the lease. I
Wow.
moved my little stuff and whatever stuff I had, like a chair and a desk, and I borrowed a bed from my cousin, so I sent that back to her. Right, but I moved back into the shared home, and I asked my husband to move out. And he was like, "But you were just moved out." I said, "It didn't work, did it?" So, at that point, now I'm stepping into taking over responsibility for a six-figure lifestyle,
Yep.
without any help.
Yep.
And so that was a big internal shift that I had to step into.
Mm.
And that's where the trust came into play. I have to
Yeah.
trust that resources will come through. If I'm such a big believer in manifestation and law of attraction and women's empowerment and all of these things, I better damn well be able to live that journey.
Mm. Yes.
So within a month, my husband moved out. We were divorced by the end of the year. So that was its own journey. But in terms of like any engagement we had to have, it was pretty much wrapped up there. And now the game was, how do I build my business? What am I
Yeah.
learning from this that I can pay it forward? Now, what's interesting is at that same time that he moved out, I happened to come across connection to Bob Proctor. So
Mm.
Bob Proctor is a big money mindset guy.
Yep.
The late Bob Proctor, I should say.
Yes. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. So he had been on my radar. I'd been studying his work, his Born Rich program. That's a lot of what I was up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, like studying that work. And somehow I got one of his things in my inbox. I clicked on it. The next thing I know, I'm talking to one of his team members. And they're like, yeah, if you want to do a program with Bob, he's got the paradigm shift. He's got the vortex, the matrix, I think. And the third one is the 1% club. And I was like, what's that? And he said, oh, it's great. It's where you spend a week in Hawaii with Bob in a small, intimate group. We have a great time. You learn a lot. And I was like, that's the one I want. He said, great. That'll be $60,000.
Yep.
Up until that point, I'd never made more than $60,000 in a year in
Mm.
my life, right? But now
Yeah.
I'm stepping into this big, like, game-changing year for myself.
Yeah.
And, I was like, "Well, can we like, when do you need it by?" This is in April, and he said, "We need it by the time you come in November."
Mm.
Okay, I think I can do this. So, it's the most emotionally and financially vulnerable time of my life, and I'm like, "Let's play big." So I
Let's
signed
go.
up for it, and I started with $5,000 and then gave him another 5,000 and another 10,000, and I spent, like, 6 months giving all my money to Bob Proctor, who didn't need my money, right? And I remember, like, it was October, and I didn't have the last $5,000.
Mm.
And I was sitting there, and it's just like everything in me. And I told the universe, I was like, I'm willing, like, I'm here, right? Like, this is what I've been working for.
Yeah.
Mel, it was the night before I was supposed to fly out to Hawaii in the morning. And I'm sitting checking my emails, and up pops up a notification that a client paid a $5,000 invoice. And in that moment, like, I
Mm.
knew like how this manifestation stuff works, how to follow my soul's guidance, you know, how to live this journey in a way that's filled with trust. And I remember I set my computer down and I got up in my living room and I was standing there and my knees hit the floor and I started bawling. But this time it was tears of, I don't have to be afraid anymore.
Mm.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
And so that was a full year to make that transformation.
Yes.
And it's something that I've never looked back from. Since then, I've still had years where, or times where I don't know where the money's coming through for rent
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and, that was a number of years ago. That was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And so there have still been undulations and cycles around that. But I've never been left hanging. I've
Mm-hmm.
never not paid my rent. I've never, like, my life is good and beautiful, and I'm well supported and well sustained. And I've had to learn how to be in that liminal space of what's going to happen with my business. What is my business feeling called to? Where are the finances coming from? Like it is a constant navigation,
Yeah.
and it affords me a lot of freedom, like being
Yeah.
able to tolerate that discomfort, trust the process, trust the universe, trust myself, follow the guidance, and just know that once you make a decision, you
Mm.
shift your timeline.
Yes.
So until you make a decision, you don't need the money, or you don't need the opportunity, or you don't need the clients, or you don't need the whatever. Once you make a decision, you're on a completely different pathway. And now the resources that match that have to show up.
Yes.
So that's been a big thing that I've learned through that whole experience.
I'm getting chills as you share that.
Yeah.
And I know I've heard parts of that journey before, and I remember when you were manifesting
Yeah.
for Bob Proctor. We were like newly kind of in each other's lives, and I was
Yep.
like, dang, this chick's fucking getting it. Like I can respect someone, and you know what even though all of that money went to him, it's like what a gift
Mm.
that you discovered in that process that I think people don't always get. They're like, yeah, but what about the money? Like you could have saved that 60,000. It's like, yes, and the building of that trust within yourself, to me, because I've been in certain situations and I'm like, you know what, the trust and the skill set that I gained in that process, to me, was worth way more than like 60 grand,
Completely.
and that's what I love you're speaking to. Is wealth is not just in the form of money. Wealth is totally in your energy
Mhm.
and your ability to navigate your inner world,
Mhm.
right? Because money is going to come and go,
Mhm.
but time, that we don't get back, right? I mean, of course, reincarnation, whatever.
But
Like,
time is a non-renewable resource.
yes.
Money does come and go. To speak to your point about, like, you could have done something else with that money. I could have done you can do a lot of things with your money, people. Like, we just can. The thing is, people ask me, was it worth it? Was the experience worth it? And I have to say, like, that actual week in Hawaii, was that worth it? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
But I was worth it.
Fuck yeah.
What I learned in that process, priceless, completely priceless. So it was a $60,000 tuition.
Mm,
It was a tuition payment
yeah.
for my own, self-development, my growth, my clarity,
Mm,
um, my knowing, my abilities. It was extremely expansive, and the people that I met at that experience, that was worth it too. For sure.
mm, yeah.
Yeah, it put
Thank
me
you
on
for
a completely
speaking.
different path,
Yeah.
but that was worth it.
I love what you're saying too, as far as when you make a choice or make a decision, you literally initiate yourself into another timeline. And I think so many people resist that because, like you said, they haven't built that trust within themselves. Like, okay, I'm going to make a decision, and regardless of how it turns out, I'm going to learn something in this process, right? And some people say, well, I don't know if I'm going to make the right decision. It's like you make a decision and then you live into the experience,
Well,
as you have taught me many times.
a lot of people end up not making a decision,
Right.
right? Analysis paralysis. And so
Yes.
now you're living by default,
Mm,
just like what shows up, and you're giving your power away then, as
yeah.
opposed to being in your self-authority, taking charge. And again, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying this is cultivated. This is learned and it's earned. So, and
Yeah.
that's where having a good guide,
Ooh,
know,
learned and earned.
learned and earned.
Mm,
Having a good guide is super helpful because you cut through a lot of the static, and you shorten your timeline in terms of, like, delays.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We could say it differently. You accelerate the process for yourself because
Yeah.
you're not playing a guessing game, right? You've got someone who understands how to work with energy, who backs you, and who can help you get your own clarity about what are your steps forward. How do you navigate the liminal space? Who are you becoming? That kind of thing, because that is your journey and it's upon you and it's not going backwards. Whatever you're leaving behind is never coming back again.
Mm-hmm.
Will never be like that. You will never be the same. And so the only option is actually forward. And so how are you going to do that? Who's in charge here?
Mm.
You get to be in charge.
Yeah.
You get to be in command. I like that word
Mm.
command because it's
Yeah.
about presence and ownership as opposed to control, which is like domination,
Yeah.
you know?
I like that too.
Mhm.
Yeah. You're so good with words. And I think for those of you who are curious, when Jennifer's saying like a guide, I know she guides a lot of people, as we mentioned earlier, healers, leaders, creatives, entrepreneurs, people who are ready for that. And I will say, mentorship is such a catalyst. Having a guide is such a catalyst to that timeline. And I think it really does accelerate the process. And you can learn from someone and still develop skills. Doesn't mean you're not going to have challenges, but I think it's such an accelerant when that guide and that mentor can really understand your soul's design too. Why your soul is here, and helping steer the ship towards that. So I know, Jennifer, you and I both have fun commitments this evening. So wrapping up our time, and I know we spoke to this a little bit, but is there anything else? And I feel like you've named a lot of things that people can consider when they're in these liminal spaces, but is there anything else lingering that you want to add if someone is really in that space? They're maybe struggling a little bit, but they're ready to like really own that space. Anything else you'd want to add as far as like strategies or thoughts, or obviously do nothing?
Yeah. So I think let's kind of recap. One is do nothing.
Yeah.
And that means
Yep.
just be where you are.
Yes.
There's literally nothing wrong with where you are. It's just an experience.
Yeah.
It's just an experience. Everything is just an experience. And so being present to it and getting curious about it, that's where you start to like find the cracks where you can start to open up and let more of your own power come through, because that's where you start to get more clarity. So
Yeah.
it's, be present in the experience, just be where you are, let the emotions move, tolerate the discomfort.
Mm.
Get curious, ask questions. What is this about? What am I ready to let go of? Who am I becoming? What am I stepping into? How do I want to be in command here? What's the opportunity that's arising? What do I need to grieve?
Mm.
What's this anger telling me? Right? Just questions, 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 because that opens up your mind. It actually will help shift you out of your limbic reactive brain and get into your cortical higher functioning brain, where you can be open to resources. You can be resourceful within yourself. You can be open to receiving resources externally, etc. And I know, Dr. Mel, you could probably speak to that
Oh, yeah.
too.
Facts.
Yeah,
It's
it
facts.
just the questions are a great way to shift out of that like survival reactive mode and into more resourcefulness. So
Yeah.
asking lots of questions, open-ended questions,
Mm-hmm.
not yes or no questions. And then I think too, understanding that there's a polarity to everything. So all
Mm.
the things that you think are happening, all the things that are disintegrating are creating opportunity for an integration of yourself at the next highest level. So everything that feels bad has an equal opposite feeling good. We could
Mm.
And so starting to acknowledge this, the feeling bad stuff, let it be what it is without resisting it, without trying to change it, and then shift your focus to what's the opportunity? What's here that's good? Because the more
Mm.
you put energy into that, then that gets amplified and then that takes on its own life. And the stuff that felt bad that you're leaving behind, it just kind of melts away. It
Yeah.
just will deteriorate itself without you having to get caught in the drama of it.
Mm.
So focusing on the excitement, the blessing, the opportunity, building momentum towards what's coming. Make sure you're asking for help, getting support, right?
Yes.
Because that's a big part of that too.
Yeah.
But, looking at the creativity, the opportunity for new identity, new experiences, new people, like that's so much of the adventure of life.
Mm, so good. I love it. You all can see why I keep bringing her on the show, because I get to learn too. I get to learn from these amazing guests and friends. Yeah, I found when I really go into those deep, dark black hole portals, as I call it, my biggest sparks of creativity often come out on the other side. And I've learned, through learning from you and doing my own inner work, like just really trusting that process and surrendering and not trying to fix it has been such a game changer. And y'all know me, like this is coming from someone where like I'm the achiever and I want to like do it all. And so I've learned to master this other side of me. And I fully 100% back up everything that Jennifer's saying. Again, her is my friend. I learned from her a lot, respect her, and also having been a client of her in her work and programs. Where can people find you, Jennifer, if they're curious to connect with you and they want to learn how to master this, learn how to tap into this themselves, and maybe are seeking guidance? Where can they find you?
So the best place to go is jenniferally.com, and it's spelled Ally,Ally, like ally.
Yep.
So jenniferally.com. I think you also have another link that you'll put in the show notes for
I will.
people. I have a tap link too that you can kind of explore a little bit more, like my YouTube channel and other resources that are there. So that's probably the best way to connect. But yeah, I'm always happy to connect. I always like to start with an introduction call. It's a great way to just kind of explore, is there a connection here? Understand kind of like what are you going through, what's coming up for you in your world, and then point you towards resources that I think will most benefit you.
Beautiful. We will make sure, y'all, that we include those links in the show notes per usual. And we will, of course, share this episode and all the links on all the social media platforms. But anything else, Jennifer, you want to add as we wrap up?
Yep, I would just say social media too. I'm mostly on Instagram, so you should have that here too as @thesexyguru. So you're going to see a little comedy stuff creep in there too, because that's another little side
Which she's amazing at.
that shows up. So yeah, I just think I want to leave people with like some words of encouragement, knowing that where you're at is perfectly fine. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels yucky, it feels wrong, even if you're experiencing shame or guilt or any of those things, it's all okay. It's part of the journey. It's temporary. That energy is going to move. Keep trusting yourself and knowing that what's in the liminal space is actually serving you and your highest good. And you're going to come out on the other side, the next highest version of you. And you'll look back and you'll think, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
So beautiful. So well said, as always, my friend. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for being a vessel of hope and healing for people. Thank you for getting vulnerable on this podcast and sharing your story. I've been wanting Jennifer to share this because I think it's going to impact so many people. So I'm really grateful that you felt safe enough to share that. Truly.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Mel. It's always a treat to be with you, and you create such a tremendous space, safety and authenticity. And I know that the tribe that is around you is really connected with you and with each other because of that.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Well, if this podcast resonated with you, if you know someone moving through the liminal space who would really, really, really benefit, please share this. This is how this podcast grows. This is how we get this work out there, is sharing is caring. And with that, we will see you all in the next episode. Peace, love, keep inspiring. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.